All right, hello everybody. Today is February 8th, 2023. This is Kubernetes SIG Architecture Production Readiness Sub-Project meeting. So let's get started. So let me display the screen. We're one day from, sorry, 1 second. Tomorrow is Kept Freeze. I have on my list about 10 or ish so left, all of which I've looked at, and a number of which are awaiting SIG approval. I need to pull myself off of. I don't need to be root in enhancements, and then it will make my life easier. That's the only reason I can't approve them yet. But there was one that came up, and it's the first item on the agenda here, and I see, I think, some SIG CLI folks here. So let me pull it up. This is, a KEP that is about server-side apply in kube control, which today is, the default behavior is client-side apply, and client-side apply. There's a separate KEP around what we call what we're calling, or the team is calling, apply set, that goes into a great deal about how broken client-side apply is, wonderfully. So it makes total sense to try to move off of it. And right now, nobody's limited. It's happened to a limited extent, even though server-side apply has been GA for a number of cycles, because the default in kube control is still client-side apply. So this KEP, and anybody from SIG CLI who wants to chime in and correct me or elaborate, please do. But this KEP is saying, hey, let's change the behavior of kube control so that by default it uses server-side apply, which sounds great. And actually, by default, it uses an auto mode where it sort of tries to figure out whether things were previously applied with client-side apply. If so, use client-side apply. If not, use server-side apply. I think that's great in principle. My concern is, and I stated here in the issue, and the comment is, this is a pretty dramatic change from the point of view of customers tooling or users tooling. So people who built a bunch of tooling that calls kube control directly currently don't specify the server-side apply flag to true or false most of the time, and so they're getting client-side apply. So all of a sudden, it's going to shift by default a ton of behavior. And so I was concerned about that. On the one hand, I'm sympathetic to the idea that we need to be able to make progress and change default behavior, but I wanted to bring this to the broader production readiness group and maybe to SIG architecture tomorrow to get, I think this needs visibility project-wide before we would make such a dramatic change to default behavior. I'm curious what other people's thoughts are. I see Katrina.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that Antoine isn't here. He's the one who's leading this KEP. But we did have a pretty lengthy discussion at the SIG CLI meeting this morning about this one. And I think we concluded that we can't really do anything huge in time for this release, because we don't really have the workable plan figured out here. Like, what does this progression actually look like, and how can we make it not disruptive to users as possible while still achieving our goals? The one thing that we were still considering, and I guess we are not sure if this still requires the KEP or what exactly would be involved, is potentially if we agree on what auto mode would mean, perhaps we could introduce auto mode behind an alpha environment variable. So in 127, so people could try auto mode, but it wouldn't even be exposed by default, and certainly wouldn't be the default value. So we thought, oh, maybe that little thing would be a useful experiment towards this goal, and could still make it in. But the bigger plan, we all agreed in the meeting, I think, is not ready for 127. Mache, would you agree with that synthesis?
That sounds awesome to me. Sorry, David. I'll just respond to them. Like, I'm sorry, did you ask somebody else?
I just wanted to see if Mache agreed with my summary, because he was also there.
Yeah, that sounds totally fine. I mean, we decided that we want to actually start moving in the right direction by providing something the environment variable as an opt-in, and in parallel maybe some kind of a warning, although we had issues about what kind of warning if we don't know what what the future will be. So that's where the environment variable as a starting point to figure out all the details and try to put together a concrete plan about the progression which we would start working on in the next release.
That sounds perfect. So then what I would do, and David, I see your hand up, and I'll just reply. I would suggest that you just change the KEP to be server-side apply auto mode as an alpha feature. It's environment flag protected, and the KEP can move forward in this release, no problem then. David?
I understand the desire to preserve our favorite name. Like I see kubectl apply. Yeah, sure. You definitely want that to actually be server-side apply. But do you get significant benefit by just admitting we screwed one up and making apply to, or a server apply, or any other different command name, so that
That's a
people
great
could
point.
clearly express their intent, choose one command or the other, and then you could actually start a deprecation and removal cycle for old kubectl apply, where at the end you say, it's been a year, it's time, and you remove the command.
Can I ask a quick question about the KEP procedure thing before answering that?
Sure.
So if we do pivot this KEP to, or Antoine, we have to sync with him. If he pivots this KEP to be that auto mode flag, do we then need another KEP for like this overarching plan to somehow eventually get, or do we then retitle it? Like, how does that work?
I would retitle it, and I would evolve this. So this would be alpha. Alpha is protected by a environment variable. When we go to beta, you would decide whether beta. So in APIs now, beta does not mean on by default, but in other feature gates it does. You could decide probably on a per cap basis whether beta means on by default. And at that point, we would have to have the discussion, I think, that David's bringing up of like, do we even keep the same name, or is it a more? And that would be SIG CLI would have to figure that out, right? Like maybe it's a better idea to do what David's suggesting. I don't know. But
Right.
for the cap as alpha, we don't need a separate cap. It's functionally, it's the same. Conceptually, it's the same thing we're trying to do. It's just we're adjusting how we're doing it as we move from alpha to beta to GA.
Okay, so we just frame what we're doing right now as the alpha piece of the current
Yes.
proposal, and maybe retitle the PR, but not the KEP itself, because that's still like the goal that we're trying to finish. I just wanted to make sure I understood what was needed.
Sure.
Okay, I'll opt it back. I opted it out of the release yesterday. I'll opt it back in
Okay.
now on that basis.
Yeah.
So to David's point, that is actually something that Antoine brought up in the informal conversations. I don't think it's mentioned as an option anywhere on the public facing PR at this point, but there are just so many different ideas that we've had about what we could do to make this smooth, how much we need to disrupt users, because there are differences versus things that we can make them not care about. And that's that discussion and the amount of options that we have there are why we decided that we need to keep the KEP going across 127 to like have a chance to actually go through those and make a plan that like end to end makes sense before we move on it.
Okay, that's fine. I was just suggesting it as an option where, like, you know, I know there's a lot of effort into like trying to make it nice, but honestly, if we get to a point where we can't technically make this nice, it's going to cause a transition for all the users who need to figure out what they need to do one way or another. It may be that the kindest thing is to just make a new command, clearly sunset the old, and then if you guys decide you really want the name, you could move back after a year of space or something where the name has been cleared out. I just server-side apply is such a useful feature. I would hate to see it forever log jammed client side we didn't know how to gracefully transition. And
I think that I will take that. I mean, it's an adjacent topic, which we already brought up. There's another KEP, David. If you haven't looked at it, I suggest you take a look. That's from SIG CLI around proven behavior, and it's sort of that trying to fix.
Apply set definitely gave me some heartburn.
Yes, apply set, exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm suggesting, and Katrina, I haven't talked to Justin yet, but like, I don't know why we're not considering this as a server-side feature as well. It seems to me like there's this effectively a long screed about how broken client-side apply is, and then we're like, so let's keep doing it. And I'd rather say like, let's not. Yeah, Katrina.
Yeah, so that one isn't super related to the one that's still on the screen. So just want to make sure that we're deliberately switching gears here, but that's mine and Justin, so I can certainly speak to it.
Yes, they're adjacent in a way. Because anyway, go ahead.
Sorry, what did you say?
I'm saying I see them as adjacent or related. They're not obviously the same thing at all, but.
Yes, the relationship in my mind is that the way that the pruning behavior is currently implemented is tied to the implementation of client-side apply, and is also broken in ways that aren't really related to client-side apply itself, but like the pruning and implementation itself is fundamentally broken. So that's the focus of this KEP, is like how, or the other KEP rather, not the one that's on the screen, is like, how do we address the pruning feature, decouple it from the implementation of client-side apply so that it will work with server-side apply. I want everyone to use. And how do we make this a feature that's going to work for the ecosystem? So that's kind of where some of the complexity comes from. We had a conversation at KubeCon, really great discussion at one of the unconference sessions about what it would take to finally move forward here, because this is an area that's had multiple proposals over the years that have never managed to gain traction. So we were trying to have that discussion with a broader community beyond just SIG CLI, like, what do we need this to look like for it to be successful? And one of the things that was particularly emphasized in that conversation is that there are tons of tools out there that already have this concept in some way or another and are already doing their own version of it. And we can't leave them stranded by making our own thing and saying everyone has to do it this way. So we are trying to develop a solution that has that ecosystem compatibility angle at its very core. And so to sort of attempt to address your question, I wish Justin was here too. The reason why we are not upfront, at least, proposing either a CRD or a built-in with the information we need as proper fields. I would love that in some angles for sure. But the reason we're not doing it up front, at least, is that we have as a core goal to be able to accommodate the existing usage of parallel parent objects, if you will. And so we would need to do both, right? We could have our own thing, but we would still need to accommodate those other things as well. And we thought this is the right way to start. And it also proves out the API.
Yeah, I shouldn't have derailed this call with that. I appreciate that response, and I wanted to make sure it was called to David's attention because it's something I'm sure of interest to him. But it sounds like he already was looking at it, and anybody else too. But great answer. I have maybe a slightly different opinion, but this isn't the place to talk about it. All right, I will stop talking, and I think the next. Oh, you have something to say?
Sorry, well, but since we were just touching on that anyway, I saw that you said that PRR was good, but you didn't actually tag it. So I was wondering if there was something holding that up that I needed to do.
No, the problem is this is just a paperwork issue that I forgot to go back and take myself off the owners for all of the enhancements repo. So if I approve and the SIG hasn't approved yet, it gets approved, and I don't have the authority. I only have the authority on paper to do that. I don't feel authoritative on approving it for the SIG. So I wait for the SIG to approve it first. It's just a process issue that I need to fix, but I haven't done it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Is Swati here? I think this is resolved. She answered my question, and she just needs to put it into the KEP, and we're good. So I think we can skip this one unless she's here to talk about it. She said she wasn't sure she'd be here. Okay, then the next item, Sergey.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up a few cleaning kind of issues. Like first is we close this dynamic kubelet config PR like kept for a long time, like it was deprecated and removed, and I wanted to document that PR happened. I don't know whether it's important or not. I just so that it may be something we want to like put for like how the consistency sake. So if anybody has permissions to approve it, it will be great. Yeah, so this cap was removed, like stable meaning that like it's dynamic kubelet config, so it was removed. There is no other label behind stable.
Okay, I trust you.
Thank you. And another thing, so we introduced a new field last time, new question last time about node resources. By the way, it's a very useful question. I already see people trying to answer it and like getting, start thinking about some implications. Very good. I also have this another PR about removing mention of dynamic kubelet config from a questionnaire. So I guess we need to do it after enhancement freeze. And I wonder if I need to add some bulk update of all other cap text right now to change the question, or I just need to like send this as a small change, and every cap owner will do that. Will do update.
I mean, if you want to clean it up, that would be wonderful. No problem there. That's where it becomes useful that I can just approve them all. So maybe do it before I remove myself from that list. And then we can just go through and approve them. So yeah,
Okay.
but definitely after enhancements freeze, let's not confuse things right now.
Okay, next Monday then.
Yeah.
Ish. Okay, and finally, I wanted to bring up this question about clarification of integration versus end-to-end tests. I've been reviewing a lot of caps, and every time there is no clarity what integration and end-to-end means. So people have two tactics. First tactics to say integration tests are not relevant. We will cover everything in end-to-end. And second tactic, just repeat paragraphs. Like literally, I saw like people repeating what they wrote in integration tests into end-to-end tests. Mostly because there is no clear delineation, what is integration and what is end-to-end. And given I only looked at SIG node caps mostly, I only glanced on other areas. Maybe there are better delineation of these tests in other SIGs, but for SIG node, it's currently I don't see good way to tell people this is integration, this is end-to-end.
I guess I thought they were the same thing too, right? Like unit tests are clear, end-to-end tests, that's the whole feature.
And the whole end-to-end, right?
Test integration is a package inside of our test folder. It is different than E2E because it doesn't take an already running cluster. What it does is it wires up various components with whatever arguments are needed to test them and launches them. It's most useful for features in the API server and auth areas where you are trying to wire up configuration to test webhooks or various special parameters that you can't control from inside of an E2E test. So
David, could you then take the action to update and make a little bit clearer the template?
Sure, not until sometime next week though. This week.
Post freeze next week, the week after, whatever. But before we get to next cycle.
Yes.
Awesome, thank you. Well, that's our official agenda, but I believe, David, you were thinking Shadows might have some questions?
I just wanted to make sure we gave an opportunity. This is sort of last call as we're going through the last, how many are remaining? Looks like the last 19, although we got to exclude like 10 of John. So like the last 10 or so.
Yeah, mine are, most of them, or maybe half of them already say approved. Most of them are on board, are well on track. I'm not concerned.
I'm just looking to see if there are outstanding questions on the remainder that someone would like to talk about live. Otherwise, I'm happy to get back at it and finish up the list. I know I've got a few to review as well. Sounds like we're all good, John.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, everybody. Great discussion, and I'm glad we were able to resolve the issue for the SIG CLI cap. We won't be doing it tomorrow in the SIG architecture then. One less thing to deal with. All right, maybe we'll cancel that meeting. Thanks, everybody.